ever. Let's talk about defensive football, Bryan. And we're going to continue with our bold predictions. And we are going to start with the team. And we are going to do some defensive bold predictions for the team. And then we'll narrow it down to some defensive bold predictions for some individual players as well. So,
Vince, did you find this one even harder?
Yeah, because the defense is freaking good.
Yeah, so
they're elite.
Here's an example of why I found this one so hard. So I'm going through I'm going through like the statistics, so like the all-time records, and Notre Dame sent this thing out, which was awesome. And because I'm still got like the 2018 version is the last time they sent one out, and like trying to add recent seasons into it and stuff like that. And so I'm going through it. I'm like, all right, let's find out where Notre Dame's defense is ranked, and I'm going through it. And I'm like, good Lord, like they finished like in the top 5 of like a bunch of different things last year. And like looking at their pass defense and their yards per play, I'm actually going to pull some of this stuff up. It was actually kind of funny going through this and being like, okay, I don't really know where to go with this one because they're so good in so many different categories. But so like, let's get past the opponent single game and get to the defensive one. Let's see here. Where's the Notre Dame defensive one? Give me a second. Trying to find the defensive records here. I think are they before the offensive records? This is so. It wasn't exactly the most
user friendly. I guess.
It's really mixed up a lot. But like pass defense, I think this is like the second or third best pass defense they've had since like 1950, and there's just all these different statistics that I'm going through, and I'm like I don't know how I'm gonna find a statistic to kind of go with on this one, because there's so many areas where last year the Notre Dame defense was so good that it just was kind of like, okay, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do with this one, right? I mean, so you're looking at here we go. It's opponent single season lows, which or just best defensive performances, but whatever. But like looking at some of these, it's like, okay, last year Notre Dame set a record fewest yards, passing yards per attempt since 1990. The defense was like 5th and lowest passing completion since 1990. Fewest passing yards per game was the 2nd lowest since 1990. And I'm going through all these records, and I'm like, good Lord, do you guys have any records you didn't like finish in the top 2 or 3 for last year that we can kind of find something? So I eventually settled in on some things, Vince, but like, and then some of the records are just like nuts. Like, okay, lowest yards allowed per game since 1960 is like 187.6 was the 1966 team. And thank goodness Notre Dame has another category like since 1990, because offenses were just so much different back then. And so I finally found a couple that I was able to settle in on, man. But it was a challenge finding some team ones on defense that weren't just like kind of lame, because it was hard to kind of find some stuff for that. So, I'm sorry, I'm trying to take that down. It wouldn't come down. Sorry about that. So yeah, that was a challenge. That one was definitely a challenge. So what was the first one that you did come up with, Vince?
So the first one I had was that the defense is going to give up less than 15 points per game. Now, here's the thing. Less than 15 points a game will put them, in most years, in the top 3, top 5 defense in the country, which I think is absolutely apropos. They were at 15 point something last year. So, I mean, they're in the neighborhood of that 15 points a game. So I don't know how bold it is, but that would, like I said, that would make them a top 3 to 5 defense in the country from a scoring defensive standpoint. And so if you're less than 15, so 14 point or 13 point or whatever, if you're less than 15, that means you're an elite defense. And I think that's where this defense belongs. And so I'm not exactly sure how bold it is, but it would still, I believe, that's better than what Notre Dame has done in a very long time.
Yeah, so I think you'd have to go back to 2012, Vince.
Okay.
Since Notre Dame was below 15 points per game. I mean, so, and again, they didn't play a lot of great offenses back then, and the one really good offense they played hung 42 on them in the BCS game.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Right.
to your point, I mean, that 12.8, you're talking about one of the best defenses of the last 50 years for Notre Dame.
Right.
And as good as some of the defense they had before, Clark Lee's last defense Marcus Freeman's defense gave up 19.7. Clark Lee's last defense gave up 19.7. He gave up 17.9. The 2018, the playoff team gave up 18.2. 2017, Elko's defense gave up 21.5. We'll skip the Brian Van Gorder error, pretend it never happened. In 2012, they gave up 12.8. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good. Being below 15, especially in today's era, would be really, really good. And below 15 last year would have ranked them, because Notre Dame at 15.9 was at 7th last year. If they're below 15, they'll be in the top 5, and they would have been the highest ranked non-Big Ten team in the country.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that the top 4 scoring defenses last year were Big Ten teams, because that league is full of offenses that suck.
Yeah, exactly. They just weren't scoring points, period, and they probably had Iowa on the schedule. So,
yes,
it is what it is. So, What is your first team defensive bold prediction?
So I had some issues with this one, Vince. You went scoring. I'm going to go total. I said Notre Dame will have their best yards per game average allowed since 1990.
Okay.
I don't know necessarily how bold this is, because last year they were kind of close to that, but it's hard to kind of build on that success year after year. And I'm gonna predict that they do. The record was 270.0, set in 1996. That's the record since 1990.
Okay.
Last year's defense was 276.3, so it was the second best defense. For context, the 2012 offense or defense that was as good as it was finished 5th at 305.5.
Yep.
The really good 02 defense, remember Ty Willingham's first year, was at 300.
Mm-hmm.
So last year's defense was way better than that.
Yes.
The last time they did this was Lou Holtz's last year. It was 270. And my prediction is they're going to go below that. They're going to hold opponents to less than 270 yards per game this season.
So yours was actually even more bold than mine, because I had one very similar. So I'll just say it now, because it's technically the third one I wrote down. I said the Irish hold opponents under 300 total yards of offense per game for only the second time since 2009. And obviously that first time was last year at 276.3. Right. So, and I looked at 2012 and I looked at all those other ones, and they all started with a 3. And I was like, okay. Well, I mean,
since 1990, to your point, Vince, like saying just holding him below 300 is not bold.
Yeah, right.
That's fair. But your point is that, I didn't mean to critique your point. Your point is that they're going to accomplish something, was not to say, okay, is it going to be 290, 280, 270, 260? Your point was it's going to be below 300 again. And since they've been keeping this statistic since 1990, Vince, they've only had 2 seasons total of under 300.
Right. So it is bold in that regard.
It is, exactly. Yeah, they're going to do something they haven't done in over 30 years.
Right.
I mean, that's bold.
You're right.
And so to your point, that part is bold. So it's not so much the under 300 specifically, like mine's more specific of where they're going to be specifically.
Yeah.
Yours is more just generally under 300, which is something they have not done back-to-back years since
ever.
They since 1990. They have done it in the past, but it's like, again, football was a little different back in the day.
Correct.
And so, because I believe in 66 and 65 and 66, Vince, they held opponents to under 200 yards a game in back-to-back seasons.
Yeah, that'll never happen again.
So,
I'm just saying.
Just for context, Notre Dame's defense in 1966, a title team, the year that they went 9-0-1, tied Michigan State, won Ara Parsegian's first national championship. They held opponents to 187.6 yards per game. The best average in all of college football last season was the Michigan at 247.0. And going back to 2009, so that'd be Wisconsin in 21. Let's go back here. Since 2009, this just quick look at the statistic chart that we're looking at. The best performance that a defense has had was 2011 Bama team, had 183.6. The next best team was a 261.5. So like that 2011 Bama defense was generational. And so you just don't see things like that happen. And to have it happen back to back not going to happen. Like I said, Bama, it gave up the 183.6 in 2011. In 2010, they gave up 286.4. And in 2012, they gave up 250. Right. That was an anomaly.
Right.
And so you are correct, Vince, that it would be a very impressive feat. I was not trying to dismiss your point. I
Oh,
was
you
simply
even
trying
took it
to
a step further, which
provide
I love.
context of
Yeah.
why the sub 300 matters, because they're saying that they're going to do it for back-to-back 300. Yeah, dude, they could give up 25 more yards per game and still be under 300. But the point would be a level of back-to-back dominance we just haven't seen in a long time.
Right.
And that's something to be kind of excited about. For sure, yeah. So
I guess technically I piggybacked off of yours. So I'll just shoot my next one out there, Brian, because we were kind of in the same neighborhood there. I went with sack totals for my second one, and I said the defense will account for more than 40 sacks for only the second time since 2009. They had 41 in 2021, and in my conversation with you prior to the show, the Notre Dame record is 41 and a half. So they are going to be knocking on the door, if not breaking the sack record this season, is my bold prediction.
So just so people understand, the record for sacks since 1998 at Notre Dame, and they don't have anything before that, but the record for sacks since 1998 was set in 1996, same year that Notre Dame set the yards average that I said that they're going to break. And they had 41 and a half. Now, Freeman's team came close to that in 2021. Freeman's defense 41. But here's the difference. That Freeman defense had 13 games. That 41 and a half in 1996 only played 11 games.
Oh, there's 2 less games. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. So, I that was one of mine, Vince, that they're going to set the quote-unquote modern sack record, which was set in 1996 with it's funny. So Notre Dame's they need an editor like I need an editor for my stories. But the thing says sacks and in parentheses minimum 30 since 1998. That's what it says, right? So in the top 7 they have 96, 92, and 94. And it's like, well, those are both pre-1998, but whatevs.
But whatever, you gotcha.
I can't be judging, that because I make plenty of mistakes of my own proofing. But
there was a drought in there as I was going back and looking at sack totals where they were in there was somewhere they were below 20. There were many years where they had 20-ish. You know what I mean? And so, 40 is a really, really good number. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that speaks to how athletic and fast and, third year of the defense and all of those things combined. Plus what we're hoping is a bit of a resurgence or renaissance or, well, just frankly, doing anything from the Viper position would be fantastic in that regard as well. So, I 41's a big number. Don't get me wrong. 41 and a half is a big number, but I still think this defense has a great opportunity to do that for a multitude of reasons. One of which I think teams are going to be behind a lot against Notre Dame, and they're going to have to be throwing the ball, and Notre Dame's going to be able to pin their ears back and come get, So I think that's part of it. I really do. I think there's going to be a lot of trailing going on for Notre Dame opponents. So that went into my thinking on not only the talent that Notre Dame has, obviously it's there, but I think that a lot of teams are going to be trailing, and they're going to have to be trying to put the ball in the air to try to come back. And so I think Notre Dame's going to get some extra opportunities to kind of get after and sack the quarterback and things of that nature. So it's a two-prong bold prediction, but still, yeah.
I dig that one. And mine was, as I said, one of mine was the same as yours.
Cool.
So it was that they would have at least 42 sacks this season. So what's your last one, Vince?
I had 3. So
one?
Yep, that was my last one. Yep.
Mine is Notre Dame won't force 30 turnovers this season, which will be among the best in the nation.
I was going to say, where does that land as far as
last year would have led the nation. In 2022 it would have tied for 3rd. It would have tied for 2nd among Power 5 teams. In 2021 it would have tied for 5th. It would have been 2nd among Power 5 teams, although Cincinnati is now a Power 5 team. They weren't the year that they had that.
Gotcha.
And forget 2020. And then it would have tied for amongst Power 5 teams, would have tied Clemson in 2020 and Baylor for most in 2020. And so that's a very, very good number. That's going to put you among the best in the nation when you're putting up those kind of numbers.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt about it. So that's your last one, correct?
It's my last one for defense. Like I said, I tried to come up with some others, but it was hard to. I mean, in order to get bold based on how good they were last year, it's almost just like now we're just being stupid.
Right.
Like now we're just like, okay,
I
that's
know.
not even real. I wanted to try to pick some things that were realistic.
Sure.
And for the Notre Dame offense, there's a lot of areas that they can need to get a lot better. For the defense, it's kind of like, well, you're ranked in the top 7 in like 13 or 14 different categories. Like, how much better can you get in some of those? I mean, they were ranked in the top 5 actually, in just pass defense. They ranked in the top 3 to 5 in like 6 or 7 different categories. So it's like, how much bolder can you get before you just sound silly? Like, we wanted to be bold. We wouldn't sound like just two crazy homers just out here saying they're going to win every game by 50. And, it's just like, so the defense made it hard, Vince. They made it very hard. But those are mine. So, and we were very much on the same page with a lot of those.
And I do want to, in case people don't understand or whatever, Bryan and I, we talk about what categories we want to talk about as far as, hey, we're going to do team, we're going to do individual, we're going to do all that. And then we kind of put together our own. Like, we don't discuss them with each other. We kind of put them together. And then when I'm done, I usually send them over to Bryan, and he purposely didn't open mine while he was working on his. And, so we don't really collaborate. Now, before the show starts, a lot of times we'll like, hey, let's see if we've got any that are the same or close, and we can kind of tie them together. But we do these on our own. And it was funny because we kind of had a bunch of our defensive team ones that were very, very similar. So just want to throw that out there. It's not like it was a group think thing. It's individual.
But it's just like, but the point is the couple areas that we looked at were maybe some of the ones they might be able to get better at: turnovers, sacks, and yards.
Yes.
So yeah,
they're already really good at it. Most everything defensively, right?
Yeah.
And so, all right, it's going to be a fun year. All right, some individual defensive bold predictions. Bryan, why don't you lead us off here with your first individual bold prediction?
Well, I'm going to stay with sacks because I believe I'm going to prescribe or go with the we've talked about this before, Vince, where a lot of the best teams in sacks are not teams that have like a guy that racks up a lot of sacks, but rather as a team, they have, a lot of different dudes. And so if you look at like last year, for example, Penn State had the most sacks amongst all power. Actually, Penn State led the nation in sacks with 49. And the highest they had was 7.5. Adisa Isaac had 7.5 last year. When you look at, I believe Florida State had one guy over 7. And that was Jared Verse, who had 9. Florida State was, let's see here, second amongst Power 5 teams. And this is last year's Power 5 teams. They ranked 4th overall, second among Power 5 teams with 46 sacks. And their highest guy was 9. And then you look at some of the other teams in sacks. Texas A&M was also very high in sacks last year. They ranked, let's see, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th among all Power 5 teams in sacks. Their highest sack per game average was 8. And so just letting people kind of see, like, just because I'm saying this, it's like, how does that fit with what you said about all the sacks you're going to have? It's going to be a by committee approach more so, but I do think the breakout star on defense from a pass rushing standpoint will be Boubacar Traore, who I have as leading Notre Dame in sacks this year, and I predict he will have at least 8 sacks on the season. So that is I think that's a pretty bold prediction.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly that is a bold prediction. Yes, absolutely. My first one is also what I feel is a bold prediction because it hasn't been done in a few years. And because of the supposed 5-man rotation at linebacker, this is going to be difficult. But I have Jack Kaiser leading the team in tackles, which is not that far out there. But I have him getting 90 or more tackles. Now, the last time Notre Dame had a 100-tackle guy was J.D. Bertrand. It was a few years ago.
It's a different defense.
But he was going to say, but since then, no one has even come close to 100, right? But the difference for me is, yes, I have no reason not to believe that there's going to be a 5-man linebacker rotation and all of those different things. But I also believe that Jack Kaiser is going to be on the field a lot this season.
Yeah.
I just do. I just don't think that they're going to pull his experience off the field very often. I also think he's got a nose for the football. He's going to be around the football a lot. And you're not going to want to pull his production off the field either. And so I I've got a really good feeling about Jack Kaiser's year. He's internally motivated. He is, from everything that we've heard, everything is going very well for him as far as at practice and things of that nature. But I mean, he flat out said it. He's like, I came back to be the dude, and I think he's going to live up to that. So that's why I have him. It's a high tackle number.
Yeah,
so like part of it's bold, part of it's not, right? Like
well, and also Notre Dame is not one of those teams like loads up like 1 million assisted tackles,
right? Yeah,
right. Like there's a kid for Old Dominion that racked up like 8,000 tackles last year.
Yes.
And what's his
very generous stat?
Yeah, Jason Henderson had 170 tackles last year.
Ridiculous.
Their number 2 tackler, Wayne Matthews, had 135 tackles, and their number 3 tackler had 107 tackles. But here's the thing. Jason Henderson last year had only 52 solo tackles.
But he had 120 assisted tackles.
Right. He had 118 assisted tackles. The other kid, Wayne Matthews, had 135 tackles. He only had 8 solo tackles.
8?
38 solo tackles. He had 97 assisted tackles.
That's ridiculous.
They had another kid that had 107 tackles, a kid named Terry Jones. He had 30 solo tackles. So, like, for context, the kid that had 170 tackles had 52 solo tackles last season. To give you a little bit of context, J.D. Bertrand had 45 in only 12 games in 2021. J.D. Bertrand had 63 solo tackles in 2021 when he led the team in 101 tackles.
So 40, yes, give or take. Yeah.
Kyle Hamilton of 2020 had 51 solo tackles and only finished with 63 total. Mm-hmm. Jeremiah Wusu-Koramoah had 54 solo tackles in 2019. He finished with 80 on the season. Tavon Coney is the closest you're going to get to that. He had 63 solos in 2018, 123 total. He had 60 assisted tackles that season. That's about more normal for a Mike linebacker. This joker had 118 assisted tackles.
This joker.
If Notre Dame handed out tackles the way that Old Dominion hands out tackles, they're going to have 4 guys or at least over 100 tackles this year.
Right.
Like, this is just you get an assist. You get an assist. If you were on the field when a guy got tackled in bounds, you get an assist.
There are people that, I mean, you're not, I know you're being sarcastic, but you're kind of not. Like, you know, a defensive coordinator be like, they're flying to the football. They're gang tackling.
Right.
You know, they're not all in on it, okay?
Right. I don't know how a team that gave up 27.2 yards per game and gave up almost 400 yards of offense has 5 guys with over 80 tackles, but, you know, whatevs.
Was it like 8 guys get a tackle every play, basically, is what that means.
Like, their number 6 leading tackler is a cornerback. He's the first guy they had on their list that had more solos than assists. They had another guy that had 46 total tackles, Vince. He had 9 solos. 9.
This is comedy.
Like, it's stupid. It's just absolutely. So the point is, Notre Dame is not one of those teams. If anything, I think Notre Dame's a little bit
stingy,
maybe too stingy on assisted tackles, to be completely honest with you. But so when you're making your statistical analysis, just keep that in mind.
Right.
That's kind of like Iowa had a kid that had 171 tackles last year, and he had a lot. Iowa gives out a lot of assists, but it was 79-92. That's kind of realistic for a Mike, right? Like Miami of Ohio had a kid that had 143 tackles last year. He had 74 solos, 69 assists. That's a really good season. And then you got some of these other teams that just hand out assists like they're candy.
Right.
You know, Eastern Michigan had a guy that had 143 total tackles last year. He had 47 solos. So it's like some of these are just stupid. So, just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So that's not what Notre Dame is doing.
No, and that's why I put the number at 90, not 170 or whatever, some ridiculous
For
number.
Context, in the last 5 years, there's only been one Notre Dame linebacker that went above 82 in a season. That was JD in 2021.
Right, which is why I looked back and looked at the totals and things like that, and that's why I set the number where I did. I was going to say 100. There's a nice round number. But I felt like because of the rotation and things, that's a little bit too bold.
And some blowouts.
Yeah.
I mean, I see Jack coming out at least 4 or 5 times at the end of the third quarter.
So that's why I still felt 90 was bold. You know what I mean?
Yes. And the other point too, Vince, is in 2021, Notre Dame didn't have a whole lot of blowouts.
Right.
I
That's
mean,
true.
you know, like they had to come from behind to be. They had to hold off Florida State late in that game. If you remember, they barely beat Toledo. I mean, this year's version of Notre Dame, J.D. Bertrand's off the field at the beginning of the fourth quarter against Toledo, right? I mean, you know, that season. I mean, you had to. Purdue was a 60-minute game. Wisconsin, they were losing early in the fourth quarter. You weren't taking your starters off the field that game. They lost to Cincinnati. Virginia Tech was a 4-quarter game. They ended up beating USC by 15. That was a 4-quarter game. North Carolina, they won by 10. That was a 4-quarter game. Wasn't really till you got down to Navy and Virginia in November. You had back-to-back games of Navy, Virginia, Georgia Tech, and Stanford where you had any chance to kind of get JD off the field. And it just so happens that during that stretch, he had three of his four lowest tackle games of the season. Was during that stretch. He had 4 against Virginia, 8 against Navy, 4 against Georgia Tech, 5 against Stanford. Games where they blew the team out and he was off the field in the fourth quarter. That's the point that I'm making. Jack's going to have I believe, a lot more games like that. JD didn't have a whole lot of those in November. He was on the field a lot in 2021 because the starters were in all those games until late in the game because they sucked on offense, or they weren't very good on defense, but their offense they just kept leaving teams hang around, man. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
How much they let teams hang around, but it is what it is. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Is it my turn or yours? I can't even. I said tackles, so it's yours.
Yeah, we'll go with mine. I'm predicting a breakout season from Riley Mills. I think Riley Mills is going to be dominant for Notre Dame this year. That's my bold prediction. He's going to have minimum 10 tackles for loss, minimum 5 sacks, and he will earn All-American honors. So I believe Notre Dame will once again have an All-American defensive tackle. I think this time, however, it will be Riley Mills. So I think Howard Cross's presence will be part of that because obviously he's going to get more attention early, but it's also built around the fact that I think Riley's just going to have a breakout season. I think Riley's going to be very good this season. Again, we'll see. He was very productive last year in a lot of in disruptions. Now he's got to get more productive on the ball. And that's the thing is Riley does a lot of good things prior to the point of having to make the tackle. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think his jump this season is going to come, is he's going to make more plays on the ball. Because if you look at him, he had a higher stop percentage, like a per snap stop rate. That's a run statistic. And he had a higher pressure rate per snap than Howard Cross did last year. Howard Cross led the defense with 39 pressures. 8 of them ended with a hit on the quarterback, and he did that on 341 pass rushes. Riley Mills had 32 pressures, 12 of which ended with hits on the quarterback. He did that on 258 pressures. So he was the better per snap producer last season, and I think he breaks out this season and has a monster season. What say you, Vince? What's yours? First of all, do you have any thoughts on? Am I too crazy for that?
Oh, no, I know you've been high on Riley Leonard. I mean, Leonard.
I've done that a million times this summer, dude. It's all good.
Right, Riley Mills. I know you're high on Riley Mills, and for good reason. I mean, look, you see him. I mean, he's one of those guys that's getting off the bus first, right? When we talk about who's getting off the bus first and all, Riley Mills is that guy. Like he's a mountain of a man. He came back for a reason. He kind of the same thing I said about Kaiser, I'm saying about Mills. I mean, he's playing with a chip on his shoulder, right? He doesn't want to be in the shadow in the defensive line anymore. He wants to make a statement, and he has all the tools to do so. I'm with you, man. I think he's got a great opportunity to make some waves. And again, some of that will be due to the fact that Howard Cross is going to get a lot of attention in the middle too. Look, you can't double team everybody like that. That's not possible. And if you do, then the ends are going to have a great season. You know what I mean? Or a linebacker is going to have a great game or whatever the case may be.
They're throwing a flag for too many men on the field.
Right. Exactly. You can't double everybody. They're not allowed to play with 22. So I love where Riley Mills is right now in his ability to have a breakout season. And I mean, he was really good last year already, and so breakout is a strong word. But we're talking about national accolades and things like that. And
he's got to be more productive.
Exactly.
He has to be more productive, not just disruptive, but productive. And then my breakout calls for him to be more productive.
Yeah. So there you go.
What's yours? What's your next one?
My next one, I think, could be taken as a negative from some people, but I will need to explain myself just a tad. I have on here that Xavier Watts will not be a unanimous, not even yet, yeah, a unanimous All-American again this season. Now, there is reasons for that. I think that, one of the reasons that he got those accolades last year was because of the stats that he was able to put up. I mean, he's got a nose for the football. He's around the football all the time, right? He was there to get some tipped interceptions. He was there, when Caleb Williams, who, and he made him look silly, right? I mean, there's certain things that Xavier Watts is very good at. Don't get me wrong, but everybody in the country knows that now.
Yes,
right. And
that's the thing, right?
And yes, then they are going to do their best to pick on the other safety, whoever that happens to be, right? Whether it's
and the nickel. I think teams are going to go after the nickel a lot more this year than they did last year as well.
Good call. So, look, is it going to be difficult to avoid Benjamin Morrison and Xavier Watts? Yeah, it's going to be difficult to avoid both of them, but they're going to try. And so I don't know that he's going to get the opportunities to get the stats that he had last year in order to get back on all of these lists.
And I don't know that he has even now, I don't know that he has the reputation to just get the benefit of the doubt the way that Caleb Williams will.
Yeah, I know, right?
Because he wasn't a highly ranked recruit, so it was considered like a coming out of nowhere thing where, Caleb Williams and Malachi Starks are both highly ranked recruits at Georgia and Ohio State, so now they're getting benefit of the doubt. Now, again, those are two incredibly talented players. I'm not at all saying that those guys aren't excellent players. They absolutely are. It's just they don't necessarily have to put up the kind of production like Malachi Starks could. Last year, 52 tackles, 3 interceptions, 7 pass breakups. If he has that kind of season this year, he'll be a first-team All-American because the assumption is he's an elite player. If Xavier Watts has that same exact production, he would be behind. Like if Caleb Downs, Malachi Starks, and Xavier Watts all have 50 tackles, 3 interceptions, 6 pass breakups, Xavier's second team, those two guys are first team. Just because of reputation, and that's just facts. That's just how it works, and it's okay. But I also think the fact that with what you said, Vince, it's going to be hard for him to outproduce those guys because of how much I agree with you that teams are going to try to avoid him as much as possible.
Yes, 100%. So it could be a negative if you want to spin it that way, but I just think it's more of a practical situation as to why I have that on there.
I'm going to stay in the secondary, and it kind of piggybacks a little bit off of it. I didn't do it on this way, Vince, but and I'm a little ticked that Andrew Gilmore stole my bold prediction. Man, I'm just kidding. He actually went one above me, but I kind of said at least. So Christian Gray, will lead the team with at least 5 interceptions this season, which will then springboard him into 2025, where he will begin the season as a preseason All-American.
It's almost like a twofer.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I like that. Right. So prediction for next year because of the production of this year.
Yes.
I like that.
I'm also a little concerned about that pick because if Andrew Gilmore sees it happening and I'm seeing it happening, I don't know that me and Andrew can be thinking the same thing a whole lot. So I'm going to have to rethink my whole prediction a little bit. But
it's a fair statement. It's a fair statement.
I love Andrew. I'm just giving you a hard time. But yeah,
I'll allow it.
I think Christian Gray has at least 5 picks this year. And
love that.
We'll go into next season as a preseason All-American because of how good he looks this season.
My next one, and I believe you are kind of in this neighborhood for one of these as well. I had picked KVA to be a freshman All-American. I think Kingston Viliama-Asa has a great opportunity, with this rotation and with what he's going to be allowed to do in this defense. Look, I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think they're going to put him in position to lead the defense, right? I think they're going to put him in a position to maximize what he's really good at, which is pretty much everything. But I think they're going to let him get after the quarterback. He's going to be able to make some highlight reel type plays, which is going to get his name on the radar of a lot of places. I think he's going to be able to, make plays in the passing game. Here's what I will say from what I've actually seen from him in practice. That man gets into his pass drops faster than anybody I've seen in a really long time. And he has a nose for the football when it's in the air, which is not something necessarily linebackers, especially middle linebackers, are known for. And he does a really good job of that. He also does a really good job of getting after the quarterback. So I think he's going to be able to make some splash plays as to where now he's on the radar, freshman All-American, that kind of stuff. And then that just springboards him into whatever he's going to end up doing next year. But I think he's going to get some postseason accolades as a freshman, freshman All-American type stuff. So That's my final individual bold prediction.
So mine is a similar along those lines, Vince. I have my bold prediction also includes freshmen, and I think this is a little bold when you consider how loaded Notre Dame is coming back on defense this season. But
I was a little. This is bold for you. Yeah,
I believe that Notre Dame is going to have 2 freshman All-Americans, and it will be one of these three players, and 2 of them will be freshman All-Americans. Those picks they'll either be Kingston, Bryce Young, or Leonard Moore. 2 of those 3 will end up being freshman All-Americans. Now, keep in mind the way freshman All-American honors work. You don't always have starters named freshman All-Americans.
Right.
Because if a guy has 45 tackles, Niles Morgan, I believe in 2014 was a freshman All-American. He had 47 tackles because there just weren't a ton of linebackers that were playing a bunch. I think because Kingston is going to be part of the rotation, I think he's going to play some Mike. He's going to play some Will. He's going to play special teams. He's going to be a 40-plus tackle guy this season. And I think he's going to also potentially get some pass rush opportunities this year at times as well. I think Bryce Young is going to get some third down pass rush, 5-sack Aaron Lynch type of rookie season, or potentially Leonard Moore as sort of a rotation corner if somebody goes down. Or
sure,
that's the thing is a lot of these guys too are in that conversation, Vince, because if somebody goes down, I think those guys are going to have chances to step in and be the guy. So I'm going to say 2 freshmen are going to be All-Americans this year.
That's bold. I mean, the 2 freshmen thing that's a
freshman All-American.
Yeah, I get you.
Freshman All-American.
Yeah. And that was what mine was too. I wasn't predicting him because I don't think, maybe KVA starts a game, something like that. I just don't see him overtaking necessarily this year, those 2 guys. So I'm not prepared to go that far, but he's going to get enough playing time and he's going to be able to make enough splash plays where freshman All-American, I think, is absolutely in cards.
Not like blocking a punt. Now that's technically not defense, but that stuff factors in to how a guy is perceived. And so
100%.
That is, and even the teams that some people don't consider Notre Dame's redshirt freshmen as freshmen because Notre Dame doesn't call them redshirt freshmen on their roster. Some of them do. But Drake's not even eligible for that because Drake played almost every game last year on special teams. So that's why he's not in the conversation. And I also believe freshman All-America team should be freaking freshmen, not redshirt freshmen who are second-year players. It should be based off of your eligibility. It should be based off your status in school, not your eligibility. It should be your first year with that team. And so I kept it traditional on that.
Right.
With who? Because if you wanted to go redshirt freshman, I could throw Boubacar, I could throw Armo Mukum, I could throw, several guys into this conversation. Jaden Alsbury as potential, guys in the mix for that. But I wanted to keep it the way it should be, which is true freshmen on that team. So that's my last one.
Yep, me too. That's going to do it for our defensive side of the football. Stick around. We got a little bit more to come your way, but make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends, all the good stuff. We'd really appreciate it. And of course, boards.irishbreakdown.com. There's always good stuff on the boards. A lot of stuff actually over the last couple of days has really sprung up, and there's even some intel in there. And so you want to make sure that you're on the boards. Definitely. So get on over boards.irishbreakdown.com. It's game week for the most part, and we are. I just think game week
tomorrow. It'll be starts game week.
Yes, game week tomorrow, and we're gonna have a lot of fun stuff.